Welcome to the Madison Miller Podcast. Today's Monday, January 25th, 2021. Today I'm going to recap yesterday's NFL Conference Championship games and look ahead a little bit to the big game, which will be 2 weeks from yesterday, February 7th. We'll go over to the NHL games from the weekend, look ahead to tonight's slate. Same for the NBA and college basketball. A couple trades and sports I want to get into. NFL coaching moves, some coordinator hires, and some possible coaching hires, and my best bet for the day. All right, we'll start in the NFL as we will go over conference championship weekend. And first, the Buccaneers defeated the Packers 31-26 as the Buccaneers advanced to their first Super Bowl in 18 years, and they also become the first team to play a Super Bowl in their home stadium in the Super Bowl era, if I'm not mistaken. So that is just amazing. As Tom Brady, 20 of 36, 280 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 3 picks. And those 3 picks came late in the game and allowed Green Bay to have opportunities to get back in the game. Aaron Rodgers, 33 of 48, 346 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. The Bucs got going right away. Mike Evans from Tom Brady, 15 yards with 10:50 left in the first quarter, 7-0 Buccaneers. Second quarter, Aaron Rodgers responds with a 50-yard pass for Marquez Valdes-Scantling, 7-7. Then 2 minutes later, Leonard Fournette, 20-yard run, 14-7 Bucs. Mason Crosby field goal with 4:59 left in the half, make it 14-10. Then with 1 second left in the half, Scotty Miller from Brady, 39 yards, 21-10. Third quarter, Brate, 8-yard pass from Tom Brady, 28-10, Cameron Brate. Then 8 yards from Aaron Rodgers to Robert Tonyan, 28-17. Then, with 24 seconds left in the third, Devontae Adams, 2-yard pass from Rodgers to make it 28-23. 2-point conversion pass failed. Fourth quarter, Ryan Suckup field goal to make it 31-23, and that's when the over hit. And then Mason Crosby, a very questionable decision by Matt LaFleur to kick a field goal there rather than go for it on fourth down to make it 31-26, and that was the ball game. And there are a lot of bad calls in this game, especially at the end. But the bottom line is that the Packers couldn't take advantage of the turnovers by Tom Brady late. And they made a poor decision by kicking a field goal rather than going for it. And by the way, if they go for it, maybe that bad call doesn't happen. So, just throwing that out there. So, congratulations to Tom Brady and the Buccaneers for going to the Super Bowl. And obviously Bruce Arians, too. It's his first Super Bowl as a head coach. Tom Brady's 10th Super Bowl. His first with the Bucs after his 9 appearances with the Patriots. So, we'll see if Brady gets his 7th ring or not. Then he'll pass Michael Jordan, amazingly enough, in terms of championships. So I think that Brady is going to absolutely take this one very personal. And he obviously wants to stick it to Bill Belichick as well, I think. And then the AFC Championship game, the Chiefs over the Bills 38-24 as the Chiefs advance to their second consecutive Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes, 29 of 38, 325 yards and 3 touchdowns. Josh Allen, 28 of 48, 287 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. First quarter, Tyler Bass, 51-yard field goal, 3-0 Bills. Then Dawson Knox from Josh Allen, 3 yards, make it 9-0. They missed the extra point. And by the way, Mecole Hardman fumbled a punt, and that's what allowed the Bills here to take advantage. But unfortunately for them, they missed the extra point. But I don't think it would have mattered anyway because the Chiefs just dominated the rest of the way. It kind of was reminiscent of that Titans game from last year in a way. Second quarter, Mahomes 3 yards to Mecole Hardman, 9-7. Darrell Williams, 6-yard run. 5 minutes later makes it 14-9. And then another 5 minutes later, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he comes back from injury, 1-yard run, 21-9. Tyler Bass, 20-yard field goal to make it 21-12 at half. Third quarter, Harrison Butker, 45-yard field goal, 24-12. Then Tyler Bass, 27-yard field goal, 24-15. Then Mahomes to Kelsey for a yard, 31-15. Fourth quarter, again, Mahomes to Kelsey, 5 yards, 38-15. Then the over in this game hit, so this was my loss of the weekend in terms of the picks. I had under, this went over. Allen to Isaiah McKenzie, 6 yards, 38-21, 2-point conversion failed. And then Tyler Bass, 51-yard field goal to make it 38-24. Now is that ball game as the Chiefs go to their second consecutive Super Bowl. So it's Chiefs-Bucks. We saw these two teams play each other in Week 12 where the Chiefs defeated the Buccaneers in Tampa 27-24. The Bucs covered the spread in that game. I picked the Chiefs to win that game, and then they did. So, rematch from earlier in the year, and then obviously these two quarterbacks met in the AFC Championship game in the 2018 season, in which the Patriots won in overtime to advance to the Super Bowl in Kansas City. We all remember the D Ford offsides, and if that doesn't happen, then the Chiefs are probably in their third consecutive Super Bowl, potentially going for a three-peat. So, I think Patrick Mahomes, this is a legacy spot for him, and obviously Brady, a legacy spot for him as well, because I don't think Brady wants to drop to 6-4 all time in Super Bowls. If anything, Brady, I think, wants to go to 7-3. Now we see Mahomes going for 2-0. So there's a lot of subplots here, obviously. Bruce Arians against Andy Reid. A lot of good coordinators. Eric Bieniemy with the Chiefs offensive coordinator. And then you have Steve Spagnuolo, defensive coordinator. And on the other side, you have Todd Bowles with the Bucs, who really has made a better reputation for himself. And then Brian Leftwich for the Bucs offensively with their offensive coordinator. So, should be a fun game. Obviously, we're going to have a ton of time on the podcast to analyze and to make a pick. Obviously, the pick isn't going to come until next Friday, which is the February 5th podcast. And maybe I'll have a guest on for to talk about props and stuff for the Super Bowl as well. We'll see. But if I have guests on between now and the Super Bowl, I'm going to be asking them for their Super Bowl picks, obviously, because it's that time of year. So it should be fun. And the Chiefs and the Bucs, Brady and Mahomes, and I'm certainly looking forward to it. Now we'll move on to the National Hockey League. We'll go over the NHL results from the weekend, and we'll look ahead to tonight's games. Friday night, Penguins over the Rangers 4-3 in a shootout. Capitals over the Sabres 4-3 in a shootout. Maple Leafs over the Oilers 4-2. Blackhawks over the Red Wings 4-1. Wild over the Sharks 4-1. Stars over the Predators 7-0. That's a warm welcome for Dallas after their COVID hiatus. Coyotes over the Golden Knights 5-2. Avalanche over the Ducks 3-2 in overtime on a winner by Gabriel Landeskog. Saturday, Blue Jackets over the Lightning 5-2. Bruins over the Flyers 6-1. Canucks lose at home to the Canadiens 5-2. Blues over the Kings 4-2. And Jets over the Senators 6-3. Panthers Hurricanes obviously postponed. Yesterday, Blackhawks over the Red Wings 6-2. Sabres over the Capitals 4-3 in a shootout. Maple Leafs over the Flames 3-2. Penguins over the Rangers 3-2. Coyotes over the Golden Knights, or vice versa, my bad. Golden Knights over the Coyotes 1-0. Devils over the Islanders 2-0. Kings over the Blues 6-3. Sharks over the Wild 5-3. Stars over the Predators 3-2. Ducks over the Avalanche 3-1. And Oilers over the Jets 4-3. Now we'll look ahead to tonight's standalone game. Amazingly enough, one game tonight in the National Hockey League, and that is between the Senators and the Canucks at 10 o'clock. Ottawa's plus 130, Vancouver's minus 154, over under 6.5. Vancouver for puck line -1.5 is +176, and Ottawa puck line +1.5 is -210. I'm going to take the over here. I think there's going to be a ton of goals in this game. Ottawa, I think, has been a little bit better offensively than I expected to start the season. And I think Vancouver has a shot here to get going. So I think this could be a 4-3 game. So my pick for this lone game in the National Hockey League tonight, over 6.5 between the Senators and the Canucks. Now we'll move on to the NBA. We'll look back on those results from the weekend, and we will look ahead to the slate for tonight. So we'll start with Friday night. Bulls over the Hornets 123-110. Rockets over the Pistons 103-102. Pacers over the Magic 120-118 in overtime. Cavaliers over the Nets 125-113. 76ers over the Celtics 122-110. Raptors over the Heat 101-81. Hawks over the Timberwolves 116-98. Mavericks over Spurs 122-117. Nuggets over the Suns 130-126 in overtime, and Clippers over the Thunder 120-106. Saturday, 76ers over the Pistons 114-110. Oh, we missed the result from Friday night. Kings over the Knicks 103-94. Now Saturday, 76ers over the Pistons 114-110. Nets over the Heat 128-124. Heat were still without Jimmy Butler. Timberwolves over the Pelicans 120-110. Jazz over the Warriors 127-108. Lakers over the Bulls 101-90. Rockets over the Mavs 133-108. And Nuggets over the Suns 120-112 in double overtime. Yesterday, Raptors over the Pacers 107-102. Clippers over the Thunder 108-100. Celtics over the Cavaliers 141-103. Hornets over the Magic 107-104. Spurs over the Wizards 121-101 as the Wizards return from their hiatus. Bucks over the Hawks 129-115. And Trailblazers over the Knicks 116-113. Tonight's games, we have 10 of them. 7 o'clock, you have the 76ers and the Pistons from Detroit. My line for this game is 76ers by a whopping 18.5. Total 223.5. And FanDuel has it at Philly 7. We don't have a total yet. I'm laying the 7 with Philly. I think that I'm getting a ton of value with them. Joel Embiid should play. I'm laying it with Philly. Raptors, Pacers. My line is Raptors 1, total 221. Meanwhile, it's Pacers 2.5. I'm taking the Raptors plus the 2.5 and plus 116 straight up. The injuries are starting to catch up in Indiana a little bit, so I'm taking Toronto. Charlotte, Orlando. My line's Orlando by a half, total 216. Meanwhile, it's Orlando getting 1.5. We don't have a total yet. I'm taking Orlando plus 1.5. I have a 2-point edge on the Magic, and I'm taking them plus 102 on the money line. Heat Nets. My line is Brooklyn 12.5, total 230, and that's the projection without Jimmy Butler. Obviously, it's 8.5 with Jimmy Butler. And I have Brooklyn 7.5, total 234.5 on FanDuel. I'm going to lay to 7.5 with Brooklyn. I have a big edge on Brooklyn against Miami. But for the podcast, though, I'm going to take the under because there's a chance Butler might play. So I'm going to take the under. Yeah, this could come back and bite me, but maybe one of these teams will get a couple stops. That's obviously a 7:30 NBA TV game. 8 o'clock, you have the Lakers and the Cavs. My line's Lakers 12.5, total 216. Meanwhile, it's Lakers 10, total 214.5. I'm laying the 10 with the Lakers. Enough said. They're the best team in the league. And LeBron should be playing tonight, so should AD. Kings, Grizzlies postponed. 8:30, Nuggets, Mavericks. My line is Nuggets 2.5, total 224. Meanwhile, it's Nuggets 1.5, total 222.5. Meanwhile, the Laker line just went up to 10.5, and I'd still take it there. So, 1.5 Denver, total 222.5. I have no choice but to take the over. I think that this could be a shootout. And I think that the Mavericks offensively could get going here a little bit. 9 o'clock, Celtics, Bulls. My line is Celtics 5 total to 28.5. It looks like that Jason Tatum will be back, but Kemba Walker won't play. Line is Celtics 8. We don't have a total yet. I'm taking the Bulls plus the 8. No Kemba Walker. I think they can survive, but I don't know about against the spread. I think the Bulls can cover this. So give me the 8 with the Bulls. Spurs, Pelicans. My line is Spurs 1 total to 21. Meanwhile, it is Pelicans 2.5. I'm taking the Spurs plus the 2.5, plus 120 on the money line. That line is the Zion tax, but I'm taking the Spurs. NBA TV, 10 o'clock, you have the Warriors hosting the Timberwolves. My line is Warriors 11 total to 25 minutes. Warriors 8.5 total to 26.5. I'm going to lay it with the Warriors. No Karl Anthony Towns still for Minnesota. Stephen Curry has just been amazing. So give me the Warriors minus 8.5 against the Timberwolves. And last but not least, the Thunder at the Trailblazers. My line is Portland 2.5 total to 24.5. Meanwhile, it's Portland 5.5. I'm taking the Thunder plus the 5.5. I think that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander could keep the Thunder in this game. The Blazers, that was a bad beat last night against the Knicks. They did not cover that game, although they won. Obviously, no C.J. McCollum and no Yusuf Nurkic. So I'm taking the Thunder plus the 5.5 against the Blazers to cover the spread, but not win the game, obviously. I think Dame will obviously carry it out of his ass again like he did last night. Now we'll move on to college basketball. We'll go over all the results from the weekend and look ahead to a slow slate for tonight. Wright State over IUPUI 95-65. Niagara over Quinnipiac 59-56. Sacred Heart over St. Francis, Pennsylvania 82-70. Merrimack over Fairleigh Dickinson 76-71. Central Connecticut State over Mount St. Mary 65-64. Green Bay over Purdue Fort Wayne 77-59. UIC over Youngstown State 67-66. App State over Georgia State 80-71. Coastal Carolina over Troy 90-81. Number 7 Michigan over Purdue 70-53. North Florida over Kennesaw State 69-54. Rider over Marist 76-64. St. Peter's over Siena 68-62. Northern Kentucky over Robert Morris 81-76. Oakland over Detroit Mercy 86-81. North Alabama over Jacksonville 82-81 in overtime. Bellarmine over Stetson 67-62. Texas State over UL Monroe 57-47. Little Rock over Texas Arlington 66-59. Louisiana over Arkansas State 81-68. Georgia Southern over South Alabama 84-75 in overtime. Marshall over FIU 79-66. FAU over Charlotte 66-53 in overtime. UTSA over Southern Miss 70-64. UC Santa Barbara over Cal State Northridge 105-58. UC San Diego over UC Davis 89-69. Cal State Bakersfield over UC Riverside 47-45. UC Irvine over Cal Poly 68-49. UAB over Rice 78-68. Wyoming over Nevada 71-64. South Dakota over Western Illinois 65-60. Florida Gulf Coast over Lipscomb 79-69. Cal State Fullerton over Hawaii 83-67. North Dakota State over Denver 70-58. South Dakota State over North Dakota 92-73. San Diego State over Air Force 98-61. Cleveland State over Milwaukee 64-53. UTEP over Louisiana Tech 82-74. And Grand Canyon over Dixie State 77-74. Saturday, big slate. Number 8, Houston over Temple, 68-51. Oklahoma over number 9, Kansas, 75-68. Number 11, Creighton over number 23, UConn, 74-66. Syracuse over number 16, Virginia Tech, 78-60. American over Loyola Maryland, 71-70. Auburn over South Carolina, 109-86. Wright State over IUPUI, 172. UNC Greensboro over Chattanooga, 74-66. Toledo over Kent State, 76-74. Northeastern over James Madison, 72-63. George Mason over St. Joe, 71-62. Drexel over William & Mary, 79-64. Coppin State over Norfolk State, 81-71. Arkansas over Vanderbilt, 92-71. UNC Wilmington over Delaware, 77-70. Ohio over Ball State, 85-77. Number 2 Baylor over Oklahoma State, 81-66. Maryland over number 17 Minnesota, 63-49. NJIT over Stony Brook 74-65. SMU over UCF 78-65. San Jose State over New Mexico 83-71. North Carolina over NC State 86-76. Lehigh over Holy Cross 75-72. Florida over Georgia 92-84. New Hampshire over Albany 71-64. Marshall over FIU 89-72. Mercer over VMI 83-80. Hopes over Towson 71-58. Southern Utah over Weber State 77-72. Montana State over Northern Arizona 58-53. Eastern Washington over Northern Colorado 82-76. Sacramento State over Montana 89-83 in double overtime. Number 3 Villanova over Providence 71-56. LaSalle over Richmond 84-78. Navy over Army 69-62. Florida State over number 20 Clemson 80-61. Incarnate Word over A&M Corpus Christi 72-53. Coastal Carolina over Troy 70-65. Bama A&M over Southern 68-58. Portland State over Idaho State 69-43. Ole Miss over Texas A&M 61-50. Number 15 Ohio State over number 10 Wisconsin 74-62. Number 14 West Virginia over Kansas State 69-47. St. John's over Utah Valley 96-78. Quinnipiac over Niagara 78-69. Louisville over Duke 70-65. Boston University over Lafayette 81-76. Morehead State over Tennessee Martin 76-44. Abilene Christian over Central Arkansas 93-58. App State over Georgia State 74-61. Charlotte over FIU 74-71. UTSA over Southern Miss 78-72. Prairie View over Mississippi Valley State 77-31. Wofford over Western Carolina 91-78. East Tennessee State over Furman 71-62. VCU over Dayton 66-43. Stanford over number 24 UCLA 73-72 in overtime. North Florida over Kennesaw State 68-65. Northwestern State over Southeast Louisiana 73-68. Green Bay over Purdue Fort Wayne 87-72. Northern Kentucky over Robert Morris 79-74 in overtime. Youngstown State over UIC 85-77. Detroit Mercy over Oakland 82-72. Milwaukee over Cleveland State 81-80 in overtime. Tennessee State over Eastern Illinois 65-54. Belmont over SIU Edwardsville 114-62. Jacksonville State over Austin Peay 76-70. Bellarmine over Stetson 76-65. Texas State over Yale Monroe 69-63. Southern Alabama over Georgia Southern 62-48. Louisiana over Arkansas State 77-74. Texas Arlington over Little Rock 66-61. Western Kentucky over Middle Tennessee 82-67. UAB over Rice 86-74. San Diego over Portland 78-70. Jackson State over Grambling 75-61. Akron over Western Michigan 79-68. UC Davis over UC San Diego 78-71. Stephen F. Austin over Lamar 102-72. Alcorn State over Alabama State 57-52. Miami of Ohio over Eastern Michigan 85-63. Number 18 Alabama over Mississippi State 81-73. Valpo over Illinois State 69-60. DePaul over Marquette 68-61. Nichols over New Orleans 86-62. McNeese over Houston Baptist 74-71. Wake over Pitt 76-75. Kentucky over LSU 82-79 or 69. Texas Southern over Arkansas Pine Bluff 66-57. St. Bonaventure over Duquesne 65-61. Marist over Rider 76-67. Penn State over Northwestern 81-78. Siena over St. Peter's 47-40. North Alabama over Jacksonville 76-54. St. Mary's over San Francisco 67-63. Santa Clara over Loyola Marymount 72-69. Santa Barbara over Northridge 80-66. UC Riverside over Bakersfield 70-63. UC Irvine over Cal Poly 67-44. Number 13 Virginia over Georgia Tech 62-64. USC over Cal 76-68. Colorado over Washington State 70-59. Oral Roberts over UMKC 60-58. South Dakota over Western Illinois 84-74. Lipscomb over Florida Gulf Coast 71-56. Louisiana Tech over UTEP 73-55. Hawaii over Cal State Fullerton 76-53. Number 19 Missouri over number 6 Tennessee 73-64. South Dakota State over North Dakota 85-74. North Dakota State over Denver 84-58. Murray State over Tennessee Tech 72-63. Cal State Baptist over Long Beach State 96-75. Grand Canyon over Dixie State 81-46. Number 1 Gonzaga over Pacific 95-49. BYU over Pepperdine 65-54. And Oregon State over number 21 Oregon 75-64. Now yesterday, Rutgers over Indiana 74-70. Davidson over UMass 69-60. James Madison over Northeastern 79-72. Coppin State over Norfolk State 81-77. Delaware over UNC Wilmington 67-62. Nichols over Carver 105-60. Morgan State over Delaware, 99-83. Stony Brook over NJIT, 56-44. Gardner-Webb over Charleston Southern, 74-62. Lehigh over Holy Cross, 82-74. UNC Asheville over Radford, 76-68 in overtime. High Point over Presbyterian, 81-57. Albany over New Hampshire, 83-64. Western Kentucky over Middle Tennessee, 68-52. Hofstra over Towson, 74-69. Rhode Island over Fordham, 52-42. Army over Navy, 87-78 in overtime. Loyola Chicago over Bradley, 69-56. Washington over Utah, 83-79. Memphis over East Carolina, 80-53. Nevada over Wyoming, 93, or vice versa, 93-88. Valpo over Illinois State, 76-6. Notre Dame over Miami, 73-59. BU over Lafayette, 64-61. American over Loyola Maryland, 81-79 in triple overtime. UMKC over Oral Roberts, 81-76. And San Diego State over Air Force, 91-59. Now we'll look ahead to a small slate in college basketball for tonight. First up, at 3 o'clock, you have Radford and UNC Asheville. My line is Asheville 6, total 140.5. I did totals for more than half of these. I apologize that I couldn't get to the rest of them. So again, Asheville 6, total 140.5. Meanwhile, FanDuel has Asheville 3.5, total 137.5. So 3-point edge on the over. And a 2.5-point edge on Asheville. I'm going to go with the over 137.5 here. Next up, you got Charleston Southern and Gardner-Webb at 4 o'clock. My line is Gardner-Webb 10, total 142. Meanwhile, it's 12.5, total 139.5. So I have a 2.5-point edge on the over and a 2.5-point edge on Charleston Southern. I'm going to take 10.5 with Charleston Southern, but I don't feel strongly about it. 5 o'clock, Loyola Marymount in Portland. My line is Marymount 8.5, total 144. Meanwhile, it's 9.5, total 142.5. So 1-point edge on Portland and a slight edge on the over. I'm going to take over 142.5 here. All right, 6 o'clock, Western New Mexico State. We can skip. Presbyterian High Point. My line is High Point 6.5, total 136.5. Meanwhile, it's High Point 7.5, total 129.5. I love the over here. I think that these two teams are combined more for this total. Like, I have a huge edge on the over. I love it. 7 o'clock, ESPN. Syracuse at number 13, Virginia. My line is Virginia 10.5, total 140.5. Meanwhile, it's 6.5, total 129.5. Again, over. Love it. I think that Syracuse and Virginia are better offensively than what this total suggests. I know these two teams have defensive reputations, but I think this game is played into the 130. So give me the over 129.5 in Syracuse, Virginia. Co against Northern Iowa, we can skip. Southern Illinois, Indiana State. My line is Indiana State 3, total 139. Meanwhile, it's Indiana State 6.5, total 136.5. I'm taking Southern Illinois plus the 6.5 at minus 104. I just think that they stay in the number. CBS Sports Network, Loyola Chicago against Bradley. My line's Loyola Chicago 6.5, total 133. Meanwhile, it's Loyola Chicago 7.5, total 129.5. I am going to go again with the over. Loyola Chicago, I think, is a good offensive team. I know both these teams are very good defensively. But I'm going to take over 129.5 between Loyola Chicago and Bradley. Alcorn State and Alabama A&M. My line is Alcorn by a half. Total 148.5. Meanwhile, it is Alabama A&M by 5.5, total 142.5. So I have a 6-point edge on the over and a 6-point edge on Alcorn. I'm going to take Alcorn plus the 5.5 and plus 190 on the money line. For the rest of these 7 games, I did not do totals. I apologize for that. But if I have to take a total, then I will do it at gunpoint. UNC Greensboro and Furman. My line's Furman by a half. Meanwhile, it is Furman 4.5, total 142.5. I'm going to take UNC Greensboro plus the 4.5 to keep it within the number, although I do think that Furman will win the game. And that game's on ESPNU. 8:30, Texas Southern, Mississippi Valley State. My line is Southern 25. It's 24.5, totals 144.5. I'm going to take the under. I think Mississippi Valley State is absolutely atrocious offensively. So there you have it as my analysis for under 144.5 for Texas Southern and Mississippi Valley State. Best game of the night, 9 o'clock, ESPN, number 12, Texas Tech, and number 14, West Virginia. My line for this is a pick'em, and West Virginia is a 1.5 point favorite. So I have to go to the total, and I'm going to take the under. I think both of these teams defensively are very good, and offensively, I don't know really. West Virginia's worse offensively without Oscar Tshiebwe, who is no longer with the team. And Texas Tech is just a good defensive team. I think Texas Tech can absolutely win this game outright. West Virginia's still coming off their COVID issues and all that. But for the podcast, I'm going to take under 137.5 between Texas Tech and West Virginia. CBS Sports Network, Utah State and UNLV. My line is Utah State by 11. It's 6.5. Total's 137.5. I'm going to take Utah State minus 6.5 at minus 104. ESPN 2, Oklahoma State and Iowa State. My line is Oklahoma State 8.5. Meanwhile, it's 3.5. I'm going to lay it 3.5 at Oklahoma State at minus 102. And they're the best player on the court in the game in Cade Cunningham. Southern and Alabama State. My line is Southern by 16. And it's 8.5. I'm going to lay to 8.5 with Southern. Actually, 16.5 is my line, not 16. And last but not least, Arizona State and Arizona on ESPN 2 at 11 o'clock. My line is Zona by 5.5. Meanwhile, Zona 5.5, totals 155.5. I'm going to take... Ooh, that's a tough one. That's a tough number, too. I don't feel good about it, but I'm going to take the under. I think both of these teams are not that great offensively, and I think that Zona and Sean Miller can get some stops with Arizona State. And Remy Martin, obviously, not there. So give me under 155.5 between Arizona State and Arizona at minus 106. So there you have it for college basketball picks for the day. Now I want to talk some trades first in the National Hockey League. We saw a big trade on Saturday morning that sent Pierre-Luc Dubois and a third-round pick to the Winnipeg Jets for Patrick Laine and Jake Roslovic. That is a very interesting trade on both sides. I am very surprised that Winnipeg was willing to give up Patrick Laine for Pierre-Luc Dubois. Jake Roslovic is somebody that I think is going to be perceived as a throw-in in the deal, but really I think can help Columbus. I think both teams made out well in this deal, but I like it better for Columbus. I think Patrick Laine can benefit from a change of scenery. So could Roslovic, by the way. So Roslovic can slide in there as their number 2 center. Patrick Laine could be in their top 6 as well. So that makes their top 6 more threatening, in my mind, unless you want to play Roslovic in the 3-hole. And meanwhile, this takes some depth away offensively for the Jets. And obviously Pierre-Luc Dubois comes in, and he will be their number 2 center behind Mark Sheffley. So this trade makes sense for both sides, and obviously Winnipeg gets a pick out of it as well. Only a third rounder. Maybe if Winnipeg got a better pick in that deal, then I would have liked the deal better for Winnipeg. But I just think that Laine in this deal makes it really, really intriguing. And I think that like I said, can benefit from a change of scenery. And I think that could very well change the outlook for those two teams for the next couple of seasons. So, yeah, Patrick Laine and Pierre-Luc Dubois on the same deal. I thought it was going to be Winnipeg that was going to acquire Luc Dubois because they had a need at the number 2 center position. I just would have never expected Laine to be in the deal. I thought it would be Rose Levick, maybe a second-round pick, and potentially a few other pieces. The guy that I thought was going to be in this trade was Ville Heinola, who was the Jets draft pick from last year. Obviously, that was their pick, and then they traded to the Rangers for Kevin Hayes, and then the Rangers traded back for Jacob Trouba. And Heinola is really, really a young, promising defenseman. I thought he would potentially go to Columbus in the deal, but no, Winnipeg's able to keep them, and then they trade Laine instead. So, we'll see how it works out, and I think that Winnipeg could have gotten more in that deal because they gave up on Laine. But I do think that Laine and Luc Dubois could both benefit from scenery changes here. So, I'm interested to see how this plays out for sure. Now another trade in sports that happened yesterday. The New York Yankees acquired Jameson Taillon from the Pittsburgh Pirates for 4 prospects, and neither of them are top 10 from the Yankee system. Miguel Yajri, Ronci Contreras, Mikel Escado, and Cannon Smith. A couple of pitchers and a lefty bat in there. Taillon, I think, has serious potential. I think this is a steal for the Yankees, potentially, if Taillon's the same guy. I know they're taking huge risks here with the acquisition of Taillon and the signing of Kluber. But I like what they're doing. And then you have those two in the middle. And Luis Severino, once he comes back, will be in the middle of that rotation. And then obviously Garrett Cole leading the way. And in the back end of the rotation, to start the year, will probably be Domingo Germán or Jordan Montgomery. And then it's probably going to be both of those guys in the rotation until Severino comes back from injury. With this acquisition, I think this gives the Yankees depth, and they didn't even have to give up Clark Schmidt or Davy Garcia. And that's really good if you're the Yankees. I think the Yankees now have depth in their rotation with this acquisition of Jameson Taillon. And I think that he could become their version of Tyler Glass now. And I think Taillon can benefit from a change of scenery on a good team. He doesn't have to be the ace. Their ace is Garrett Cole. And what I think will benefit Taillon is that he's close with Garrett Cole. Obviously, those two were teammates in Pittsburgh. And now they're teammates again in New York. And I love this acquisition for the Yanks. And Joe Musgrove was someone that I know the Yanks were looking at. But I don't think Joe Musgrove is as good as Jameson Taillon. I think Taillon's better. And I said at the time that the Padres got Taillon that I thought they gave up a little too much for a guy that's going to be their number 5 starter. But to the Padres' credit, they're going for it. But Taillon is much better than Musgrove. I mean, you never know. Taillon could be an absolute flop like Sonny Gray and James Paxton were with New York. Well, Paxton wasn't that big of a flop, but Sonny Gray was. And if Taillon is a flop and Musgrove turns into an elite number 5 starter for the Padres, or a 4, depending on how you feel about Chris Paddock, then Musgrove's the glass now and not Taillon. And meanwhile, for Pittsburgh, there's people in the industry that think that the Pirates did well in this deal. Obviously, Escado has some upside. Contreras and Yajri are big league pitchers and could be seen in the big leagues this year. And then Camden Smith has a really promising bat. And there's some people in the industry that think that Taillon got a better return than Musgrove. Well, that's because Taillon's better than Musgrove. That's why. And I thought that San Diego gave up a nice package for Musgrove with that outfielder going to Pittsburgh. And I think now from the Pirates' perspective, I think they're the worst team in the league. Like, I can't name a single player off their roster. Taillon gone. Josh Bell gone. Joe Musgrove gone. The closer Felipe Vasquez, I think he could potentially be gone. Gregory Polanco, you're next. And then Austin Meadows was someone that they traded with Tyler Glass. Now that's a mistake, obviously. So yeah, this is obviously the worst team in the league going in the next year. They're going to be as bad as the Orioles were a couple years ago, and they were just god-awful. And they're going to obviously land the number 1 pick in the 2021 draft. You can't tell me a team that's worse than the Pittsburgh Pirates right now. And the NL Central all of a sudden goes from like a deep division to a quietly bad division. Like the Reds are supposedly sellers, and they're a team that wants to blow things up and are not in a good financial spot due to the pandemic. The Cubs traded away Yu Darvish. The Cardinals are still pretty solid. The Reds still have pieces. The Brewers still have pieces. But I don't really trust them. And who am I missing from that division? Cardinals, Cubs, Brewers, Pirates. Brewers. Yeah, Brewers, Pirates, Cubs, Cardinals. And they're missing someone. Oh, the Reds. Yeah, we talked about everybody in that division. But yeah, that division all of a sudden is very, very weak. And then from the Yankees' perspective, I think they reestablished themselves as the American League East favorites over the Tampa Bay Rays because the Rays traded away Blake Snell. And they still have some holes on their roster offensively. And I thought that they were exposed in the World Series a little bit by the Dodgers offensively. So with the re-signing of DJ LeMahieu and these 2 acquisitions in their rotation, I think the Yankees are favorites in the American League East again. Are they the team to beat in the American League? That's remained to be seen. I think the White Sox are awesome. I think the Athletics are really good, even though they lose Liam Hendricks to the White Sox. And the Astros lose George Springer, but they're not a bad team either. But they lose Verlander for next year, so they're not as good. The Indians lose Lindor and Carrasco, so they're not as good. But the American League is quietly weak. They have, I think, 4 good teams. Yankees, Rays, White Sox, Athletics, and the rest, you could argue, are either could be good or could be bad. But we'll get into that once baseball gets closer. There's still more moves to be made. Still guys that I think could potentially be traded. And obviously we'll start with the preseason rankings with the players once the Super Bowl's over. So there you have it. Yankees acquired Jameson Taillon from the Pirates for 4 prospects. Now we'll talk some NFL coaching stuff. There are still coaches to be hired and some coordinators to potentially be hired as well. Word just came down that the Eagles have hired former Chargers offensive coordinator Shane Steichen as their new offensive coordinator. He helped develop Justin Herbert a year ago, so maybe he can help rejuvenate Carson Wentz. So Shane Steichen under Nick Carriini, not bad as an Eagles offensive coaching staff. So that's a nice hire for the Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously the Seahawks offensive coordinator position, is still vacated, and they are interviewing Bills quarterback coach Ken Dorsey. So that would be an interesting hire. He helped develop Josh Allen, so that would be a really nice hire for the Seahawks offensive coordinator spot. Maybe the Steelers could look at him too. Pep Hamilton interviewed with the Steelers, so that's another possible candidate for offensive coordinators. And the Texans' head coaching job is still open. Obviously, the guys that they interviewed, Eric Bieniemy, if I'm not mistaken, I believe they hired the former Lions and Colts head coach Jim Caldwell. It would be a nice hire. He got a lot out of his teams in Detroit, and then obviously he did a good job with Indy. But I look at him as more of a Peyton Manning product, and same with Adam Gase. And Adam Gase, by the way, was interviewed for the offensive coordinator position with the Seahawks too. So that's something to monitor as well in terms of coordinator job openings. So obviously we'll talk about more on the podcast. We'll see if the Texans have a new head coach come tomorrow's show, or if the Steelers or the Seahawks have a new coordinator. So there you have it. And last but not least, best bet of the day brought to you by FanDuel. There's not many great options on the board tonight, but one stood out to me in college basketball, and that is the over in the Virginia-Syracuse game tonight. That game's obviously going to be on ESPN, so a lot of people will be watching. So give me over 129.5, Syracuse-Virginia for best bet of the day. And there you have it for the podcast. I'll be back tomorrow recapping college basketball, NBA, and NHL, and looking ahead to tomorrow's games in each of those sports. Maybe I'll do power rankings for the NBA tomorrow, and any other news that happens in the world of sports and pop culture, I'll have for you as well. Hope you guys have a fabulous day, everyone.